Hi friends, welcome back to another episode of the podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, you will notice today's video is of me doing some colouring. If you're an audio listener, then there is no change really, just not really feeling like being in front of the camera today. And I'm not going to lie, I had other episodes planned. I have like 3 compilations of story times that I made about 2 months ago that I probably listened to a minute of the first part, went and got the other parts, got them to react to. So I don't even know the full tea. When I'm recording it, it's going to be my first reaction, but I just haven't been able to do it, and I've been thinking about what I was going to do for this week's episode. I have so many ideas, but there are ones that take time and mental energy that has been really lacking. But also, I don't want to feel like I'm just making reaction content, because that's not really the way I want to go with the podcast. But recording that and not just having general chat to break it up felt weird, and really what I'm trying to say with this introduction is I don't know. This is kind of a follow-on from the episode that was released last week, but that was probably recorded the middle of March as I was trying to get ahead, and I am literally recording me speaking this the day before the episode's going up. I did this colouring probably over 2 days. The first part of it, pretty good, where I had it sitting and stuff, but the second part I had to zoom in and try and expand it, and my hand was in the way. But this is something that I do to cope, and it's the first time of me properly recording it to show. So, any feedback is appreciated. If it is constructive, I love that. Please just don't be an arsehole, because I'm sensitive just now. And even on days like today where my brain is a bit scrambled, if you enjoy listening to me chat, please consider subscribing and leaving a like. You can find me on TikTok and Instagram at Chronicles Pod. I have been using Instagram a bit more as I'm going through my journey with my prosthetic, so if you want to see more about that, you know where it is. I'm going to get into this week's episode and see where it goes, what's on my mind, and what needs to come out. Let's see where this goes. I've been going to physio recently, which, don't get me wrong, is a good thing. It's about building confidence again, about learning to trust my body after being out of action for so long, but it's just a lot. For the last 8 months, I've been using a wheelchair full time. That was my norm. So now that I'm trying to reintroduce walking, I can't just jump back in and expect my body to pick up where it left off. And that is really frustrating, because in my head, I'm like, I used to be able to do this. But when I actually try to do it now, it's harder. And sometimes it feels way harder than it was at the beginning. And that just really messes with my head. It feels like I've gone backwards, and it feels like I should be further along by now. Like, the saying, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. It's meant to be reassuring. Like, progress isn't always linear, but when you're literally learning how to walk again, it doesn't feel so metaphorical. It feels so painfully literal, because sometimes I am taking 2 steps forward and 1 step back, and sometimes those steps really fucking hurt. They drain me, and I can feel that 1 step back in my bones the next day. And don't get me started on the leg setup, the fitting, the belt, my stump socks. It's sweaty, it's warm, the friction builds, and recently, to fix the way it was sitting, I had to deliberately turn it a bit so that I could settle it into the right position. And even doing that, it meant that I was walking for 10 minutes with my leg not sitting right, and me knowing that it wasn't sitting right, just so that it could maybe feel okay after those 10 minutes. And that is because with the socket that I have just now, it is wearing stump socks to build up if there is any loss of volume from the stump. So I started off wearing one thick sock. However, when I went a walk last Monday, I wore my thick sock and I was finding that my leg was really turning in. Even when I was stopping and adjusting and turning the belt and making sure it was all secure, it was still turning in. So that meant the next day I had to add a thin sock on top of the thick one. However, it just wasn't right. It's almost like my stump has lost volume, but it's not lost enough volume to add an extra sock. So I need to really get into wearing the leg before it feels like it's not going to go anywhere, because for the first 10 minutes I could lift up my leg and it felt like the leg was going to fall off, and the only thing that it was keeping it on was the belt around my waist. And that whole thing is wild to me, and I don't really know if non-disabled people really understand how weird and technical it is. Imagine I'm basically trying to break in my own leg. It's essentially what I'm doing. And if you are someone who has never had to think about putting on a prosthetic, imagine this. It's like breaking in a new pair of shoes, but instead of just the shoe, you're breaking in the sock inside of the shoe, one that's not quite sitting right, that's rubbing or twisted, or it's too tight in one spot. So you take the shoe off and you adjust the sock and you try again, and it's still not right. So maybe then you take both off and you try again. And if it still feels weird, you just walk on it for a bit and really hope that it settles. Except it's not just a shoe, it's your whole way of moving. And that whole routine, it's not just once in a while when you get a new pair of shoes, it is every single day, every time you put your shoes on with a different pair of socks. And that is, I feel like that's the best way to try and describe it, because it almost is like trying to find a shoe that works for you, that's comfortable, that doesn't make your foot too sweaty, that doesn't itch, that doesn't rub, that doesn't leave blisters. It is kind of like that when you think about a prosthetic leg, except it's not a foot, it's literally part of my leg that is going inside of a plastic socket. So there is all that. And then again, it's not just the physical stuff, it's the planning, the pacing. In my head, something like I'll just pop to the shops really sounds simple, but in reality, how do I even do that on my own? Do I take crutches, walking sticks? Do I push a trolley? Do I grab a basket? How can I carry a basket if I need two walking sticks or crutches? How do I push a trolley? And this was actually part of my pacing plan with my physio. We'd agreed that I usually go to the shops on a Monday in my wheelchair, so I'll try and go to the shops with my leg on a Monday, and that would count as being a more active day. However, the other day I went to Lidl and I did notice that they had these trolleys with handles that looked like they could possibly be for people who use mobility aids. You could put some weight bearing through them, but also I don't actually know if that's what it's for. It's a whole other scary experience trying to walk around with a trolley instead of sticks or crutches, and then this fear that if I put too much weight through the trolley that it tips, or worse, I tip, and then it's me and all of my shopping on the floor, and it's really just not a risk that I can take yet. So it means I need to wait until I have more confidence, wait until I can go with someone I trust, someone who can help me if I need to sit down or take a break, because supermarkets are honestly probably one of the least accessible environments. There is barely anywhere to rest, it's loud, it's overstimulating, and it's really not made with disabled people in mind, which means something as small as picking up a few groceries means it is this massive logistical challenge. But again, the planning and pacing comes into play. Sure, there are parks round about me, but most of them are hilly or inclines and have open areas, but there may be grass or barely any benches. And right now it's Easter holidays, so everything is busier with the kids being off school, which adds another layer of unpredictability. So I picked a park that was about a 30-minute drive, 35-minute drive from my house. At the time, this felt like a great idea. I was in the car, the sun was out, I had my music bopping, and for a moment, I forgot how heavy the depression had felt earlier that morning. Like the kind of heavy depression where your body wants nothing more than to just stay in bed and wrap yourself in the covers. But here I was in the car, leg on, and pretty determined, to be honest. I walked 100 metres to the bench, sat down and looked out at the water for about half an hour, had a little stand up and a look out at my surroundings and kind of just taking a moment to appreciate nature. I then walked 100 metres back to the car, which sounds pretty simple, right? But it was hot for Scottish weather anyway. Like, we don't get many clear sky sunny days, and I am a fair skinned girl who basically feels like a vampire in the sun. And after walking back, my body was done. My muscles were shaking so much that even in trying to stand still, it looked like I was doing a wee dance, like kind of bopping my body. So I sat in the car with the door open, fucking sweating my pan in, and really trying to collect myself for about 15 minutes. I then managed to drag my legs into the car and sit for another 10 minutes inside of the car with the doors closed, no key in the ignition, no engine on. My body was overheating like mad. My temperature regulation was completely off. And guess what? I still had the 35 minutes to drive home. So on the way, I stopped for some chicken nuggies because I needed food. And I knew for a fact if I was already feeling like this, if I drove home and I crashed out and slept, I probably wouldn't have the energy to then get up and make food. So I had to make a conscious effort to go have something to eat before I got home. And chicken nuggies are a very safe meal for me. So I stopped and I noticed I had a warning light on my car telling me about tyre pressure. And I was getting quite worried, like I'm somebody that is anxious about my car because I lost my leg from a car accident, So I hobbled round the car checking to make sure that none of the tyres were deflated, which they weren't. However, this felt like climbing a fucking mountain with how tired my body already was. But I did have like a little win thought of like, oh, perfect, tomorrow's a less active day, I'll check the tyre pressure. And I got my nuggies, really wanted some ice cream, drove round 3 times and realised that KFC did in fact not have a drive-through. So I drove home, crawled straight into bed and was just wrecked. And it wasn't even something big, like, but you know what, when I got back into the car on Monday, I did still celebrate the win that it felt like to me, because I was able to remind myself a few more times working on this, a month, a few months, and I'll be able to go around a 400 metre track. Measuring distances in such small chunks feels odd, but it's necessary, and that's kind of where I'm feeling that restriction. It's not that I don't want to do more, it's that I can't yet, and I'm having to break even short time goals into fragments, and that is really hard, especially when things seem easier. So the next task on the Tuesday was to go check the tyre pressure in my car. I really did think that this would be a 10-minute job, quick and easy. But like I had just said there, even after being an amputee for 2.5 years and a wheelchair user for 5.5 years in total, things still feel easier in my head than they are in real life. I lived for so long in a non-disabled body that I still think that way sometimes. And damn, is that hard to reroute that thinking, especially when you're doing things that don't hit you in the moment, but your body cashes the checks later that night or the next day. And that's when I know I've fucked up. That's when I know that I have overdone it bad. And I just feel stuck, trapped, like sometimes my own body is working against me. I've been sore, I've been tense. My body has just felt so heavy with fatigue, like that kind of tired where your limbs and everything just feel like a bag of rocks or like you're full of sand. And all of this was from 30 minutes of effort, one task, something that would seem easy to anyone else. And the next day, I really did feel like I'd been hit by a bus. I didn't want to get out of bed. My whole body was aching. My brain felt so slow. And I felt like my muscles were all like stretched thin, like an elastic band that's about to like snap, like that feeling of tension. I tried to play my Switch. I couldn't get into it. I switched games, still not feeling it. I tried to script this episode. Nothing really came out except from like an intro and just bullet points, because like, how do I put this all together and something in front of me when everything in my brain just feels like spaghetti? And it was like 4 p.m. and I was already tired and starting to spiral, and that kind of fear crept in that if I nap now, I'll sleep all night and then that's a whole day gone. And then it becomes a thing because yes, sleep can be a rest day, but if I sleep too much, it starts to slide into depression for me. And it's really hard for me to notice these things and make these choices so that this cycle doesn't continue in that way. And I don't want to feel like I'm avoiding my life, but at the same time, how do I know when I'm resting and when I'm hiding? It's very difficult to pinpoint these things, and I think this is what people don't really understand. Every step forward takes energy, mental, emotional, physical energy, and it's not always visible to others from the outside. I might look like I'm doing better. I'm standing, I've got my prosthetic on, but what you can't see is every step is calculated, every moment is thought through. Push the crutches forward, not too far, lift your leg, don't drag it, engage your glutes, don't take a big step, don't take a small step, don't lock your knee, don't forget to breathe. These are all the things that are going through my head whilst I'm literally just walking. And then on top of that, I'm thinking about my trauma recovery, my CPTSD, my nightmares, my relationship, my prosthetic, my bloody podcast schedule. And sometimes it really just feels like I'm playing a game on expert mode whilst everybody else is just doing the tutorial. Like, cool, walking for you is not a big deal. You can go to the shops, but for me, that's a whole mission. Like, I think, yeah, if you're wondering how I'm feeling, I don't know. That is my honest answer. I'm trying, I'm moving forward, but fuck me, it's exhausting. And I know I'm not the only one who feels like this. I've seen other amputees talk about how isolating this process can be, about how every small task can become a mission, about how people expect you to be grateful just because you can walk, without understanding the full context of what it actually takes to do that. And I know that there are other folk out there listening who live with other disabilities or chronic illness or trauma who get what I'm saying. Because even though I know rationally that I'm not alone in this, it still feels lonely sometimes. Like I'm the only one in my world navigating this invisible, heavy thing. And there are moments where I catch myself thinking, why am I finding this so hard? And then I remember, because it is hard, because my body has been through a lot, and so is my brain. And even if I'm smiling or cracking jokes or getting something done, I might still just be fighting to just keep myself upright, physically and emotionally. And I'm trying to explain that to other people who aren't in your body. That is a whole other level of hard. I've found myself really relying on imagery just to try and kind of bridge that gap, to communicate what I'm feeling when words don't just quite get it. Like trying to describe phantom pains by saying it feels like somebody has taken pliers to my toenails that aren't even there anymore, or saying that the nerve pain feels like spiky fireworks going off inside of my stump, or that moving forwards can feel like walking beside somebody, but whilst they're on flat ground, I'm struggling through the quicksand. And that's where the loneliness really hits, because even when you have support, even when people are showing up and caring, it doesn't always reach the places where those feelings sit. It's like I'm at the bottom of a well and I've got my people coming and dropping down supplies and checking in and sending encouragement. But at the end of the day, I'm still the only one at the bottom. And that's a hard place to describe to someone who has never been there. So if you have listened to this episode, listened to me rambling, even just watched the video on YouTube for some satisfying colouring, if you have resonated with how I have felt the past couple of weeks, couple of months, please know that I see you. You're not lazy, you're not making excuses, you're navigating life with weights that other people can't see. And if you ever want to try and offload a bit of that weight, I'd love to hear from you. This stuff can feel all-consuming, and sometimes I do worry that I'm just talking into the void, or maybe, just maybe, there's somebody out there that needed to hear this today and go, oh, it's not just me. And this is a reminder for myself too. On the days where I feel like I haven't done enough, it's about coming back to the basics. I'm still alive. I'm still breathing. And that means I still have a chance. I think when you go through life not really being able to see a future because it has been shaped by trauma or chronic pain, it makes the idea of looking forward feel a bit daunting. So sometimes really it is just a day at a time, an hour at a time, a step at a time, whether that step is forwards or backwards. If you are still here after listening to this rambling, then thank you. Please show some love to the podcast, like, subscribe, share it with a friend. You know the score. Next week, I think I'm going to do something A bit similar to this, I've got another video of me doing some art that I started about a month ago, and I recorded the process to kind of voice over on days like today when I don't feel like being on camera. So I think that next episode will be one where I maybe talk about emotional maturity, specifically how growing up around people who couldn't meet your emotional needs because they lack that maturity can have a huge impact on us as kids and how that carries forward into adult lives. If you're watching this on YouTube, I would actually really love your feedback. Have you enjoyed this kind of episode where I am just voicing over some colouring? This is something, like I said at the start, that I just naturally do to cope, and I love it. So it did make sense to combine it with podcasting for the times where I'm feeling kind of low. I also love playing games like Stardew Valley, but I'm not quite sure how I would record when playing that because it's on my Switch, like not on my computer. But if that is something that you would like to see in these more laid back, chatty episodes, then let me know. If you ever want to get in touch or share your thoughts or feedback outside of the comments section, you can drop me an email to cripplecroniclespod@gmail.com. Until then, I hope you have a gentle day or week. Be kind to yourself, and I'll hopefully see you next week. Bye!